Hello, this is Dr. K. Paul Stoller, and the following video is based on a perspective I wrote titled, Follow the Scientism for a Peer-Reviewed Journal. We all remember the technocrats, and the so-called experts and other proponents of medical tyranny repeated follow the science over and over during COVID and beyond. All the while they were lying to our faces with prevaricating mantras such as safe and effective. One notorious instigator, Anthony Fauci of the democide, actually said he was the science. Given he controlled billions of dollars of grants and also controlled those who would get them, he was in full control of the scientific research environment. While he had a job at the NIH, he seemed to be the top biowarfare man of the USA, in charge of making sure there were plenty of contagious pathogens that could be used against humanity. Culling humanity was the ultimate agenda. What he should have said is, I am the Scientism. It is not speculation that we have been subjected to a democide, and as of this writing, no one has been held criminally accountable. Thus, they will try again. After all, why not? Scientism is a mixture of dogma and magical thinking. That is my definition. The dictionary definition is it is a belief that only through science and the scientific method can truth be discerned. That may sound quasi-reasonable, but the word belief gives it away. Its proponents are involved in a religion. Real science is a process of discovery, a process of understanding based on evidence. Saying truth can be obtained by attempting to understand evidence is fairly benign. But when it takes on this mantle to the exclusion, censoring of other evidence that doesn't fit the belief paradigm, then this is dogma. From dogma comes believing in things with no evidence, even absurd things. To quote Voltaire, anyone who can make you believe absurdities can make you commit atrocities. When people are manipulated with dogma, we are in the arena of tyrannical or pathological scientism. An example of the absurd is having the human body make the most lethal part of the CoV-2 virus in all its cells, the spike protein. Who thought of such absurdity? Why is this absurd? Because in addition to the damage the spike protein can do itself, the human body will attack a cell, making a pathogen, and when many have died and others will die, it is an atrocity. I submit many previous civilizations, in our prehistorical past, faced conflicts between those who were science-based and those who were scientism-based. This struggle often took place at a pivotal moment on the timeline of those ancient civilizations, and often led to their destruction. Using public health programs for the purpose of mass medication or vaccination, based on no valid evidence, is what those of us in the USA and in other countries have been subjected to for decades. The only silver lining is an increasing awareness by the public of these shenanigans. First and foremost, those who supposedly are in our service, public servants, are actually very prone to financial incentives to overlook the substitution of scientism for science, no matter how many fellow humans their decisions might hurt or kill. Controlling people with money is no new revelation. For example, scientists who don't agree with the global warming scare, man is the cause and must be eliminated to save the planet, don't get funding, don't get their research published, and are marginalized in every way possible. Follow the money. Someone or some people are funding the proselytizing of this false religion, and they need to be exposed and then arrested. Oh, you might think, our government would not do that. Really? The same government actively trafficked hundreds of thousands of children into the USA, and then handed them off to some of the most despicable people on the planet. Our government wouldn't do that, but they did. and up to the end of 2024, they still were. This sick pedophilia enterprise, it is a big business, runs many of the world's governments and must be exposed. In another example, when I and a friend were in middle school, we would walk in cold to businesses and ask them what they did, why they were there, etc. Yes, we were eccentric. One of those businesses was the John Birch Society. I knew of them, and they did not have a good reputation. In its heyday, it was considered a far-right anti-communist organization against the New World Order, the United Nations, the North American Free Trade Agreement, and so on. They believed the U.S. Constitution was being trampled by globalization. In other words, they were perhaps the first America First organization. Whoever was manning the office kept me waiting a very long time. But while waiting, I was reading their literature available in the waiting room. Their literature on why putting fluoride in municipal water supplies was a very bad idea. I had walked into the John Birch Society thinking they were right-wing, racist nut jobs, but here I was reading about fluoride and my internal truth meter told me this rang true. It all made perfect sense to me. It was regrettable that this organization that most dismissed as wingnuts was the only one protesting against the mass medication of the public without consent. I find it interesting that the fluoride issue has once again come to the fore to be looked at. I fully expect the practice of fluoridated water will end in 2025. Now that it is indisputable, it causes brain damage, lower IQs, and cancer. At about the same time the U.S. started fluoridating drinking water, they started using DDT, the insecticide, and used it with abandon. Acute flaccid paralysis or polio didn't exist until the heavy use of various pesticides, which then weakens the immune system. So a previously benign stomach virus could start causing paralysis. The government had encouraged and required the liberal use of DDT, and often for polio prevention. Nevertheless, a virus, and only a virus, would be blamed for what was actually an illness facilitated by a toxic cofactor. The mass vaccination campaign initially gave millions a retrovirus infection, a simian virus, SV40, now known to be causally related to several types of cancer. Don't misunderstand what is written here. An enterovirus causes the illness, but it needed a poisoned immune system in most cases. If the truth of the toxic cause of polio was known, and the government held accountable for infecting millions with a cancer-causing retrovirus in the polio vaccine, we would not be where we are today, where fear of a virus allowed the deployment of a lab-created bioweapon for the purpose of culling the population. The first mass vaccination program for polio in the United States, now called the Cutter Incident, gave 200,000 children polio. To convince the public the polio vaccine program was working, the definition of polio was changed so that one had to be paralyzed for at least 60 days to be classified as having polio. Most cases resolved before 60 days, and of course, they knew that. It made the vaccine look very effective. Instead of having polio, you had transverse myelitis, or Guillain-Barré syndrome. During COVID, the consolidation of centrally controlled information was carried out via the cancellation of individuals, censorship, academic payola, and bribing media outlets and influencers. The public was told to only listen to the experts, their experts, the anointed ones, the priests, deacons, and subdeacons of the regime that was in control of the U.S., all bent on manifesting the goals of the UN Initiative Agenda 2030, a global technocracy that would usher in oversight over everything, along with carbon taxes, vaccine passports, digital currency, and social credit scores, making it feasible to completely control humanity for the purpose of culling 90% of humans on the planet. Unleashing gain-of-function infectious diseases, hyping up the dangers of the illness and its numbers, and declaring emergencies is their playbook, and they kept trying to use it. They have to use a playbook as they don't think well on their feet, and they are not very smart. The latest incarnation was the bird flu scare. For decades, the elite death cult members have been trying to get a bird flu scamdemic going. So the end of 2024 saw perhaps the 5th time they have tried to use the bird flu for financial gain and control. Bird flu was reported to be breaking out in dairy herds in several states, which begs the question, exactly how did they get it? Transmission of influenza A in the bovine population is extremely rare, so suspicions should be extremely high, given the new bird flu outbreak is with clade 2 SOC4IVB that came right out of the USDA research lab. By serial passage, they got it to spread from chickens to migratory waterfowl, and now it is in cows and apparently bears. Generating fear and then obtaining more power seems to be a modus operandi, be it from mystery drones or arson-set fires. The state of California declared emergency powers in March of 2020 for COVID and kept them in effect unconstitutionally for almost 3 years. With only one case of human bird flu, California invoked emergency powers again in December of 2024. These powers give the neoliberal globalists, such as the governor of California, the means to control what he would not otherwise have the legal authority to use. He declared them again after he apparently helped burn down areas of Los Angeles via his decisions to adhere to UN Agenda 2030. There is still confusion by design, because the proponents of scientism label anyone who disagrees with them anti-science, racist, transphobic, or worse. The captured legacy media was still controlled by the end of 2024, and their disinformation was quickly put out to the public. The U.S. Department of Homeland Security Cybersecurity Agency went far beyond its congressional mandate in hunting wrongthink and monitoring emotions of the public. The Cybersecurity and Information Security Agency, or CISA, of the Department of Homeland Security expanded its mandate in January 2017. This happened when DHS asked for government-funded think tanks to flag misinformation, which was often simply political speech that the regime didn't like, and pressured social media platforms to engage in political censorship. The council that took charge of the U.S. government after the stolen 2020 national election repeatedly pressured Facebook to censor certain COVID-19 content, including humor and satire, said Meta Facebook CEO Mark Zuckerberg in August of 2024. I believe the government pressure was wrong, and I regret that we were not more outspoken about it. Biden was not a member of the council. He was merely a demented puppet whose only concern was to cover the crimes of his family and getting his butt wiped. The head of the Stanford censorship program said its function was to fill in the gap of things the government couldn't do. CISA began its hunt for disfavored speech about COVID-19 as early as the week of February 18, 2023. The new documents, obtained from litigation by American First Legal against the State Department and CISA, show that the latter agency had COVID censorship on its mind long before it decided to focus on election censorship. Incredibly, the evidence is that CISA relied on a dangerous anti-American blob of authorities to closely monitor what the American people were saying, said Reed D. Rubenstein, America First Legal's senior vice president. CISA was created to protect the homeland from terrorists, not to protect incompetent federal bureaucrats. While the monitoring of social media narratives may seem innocent enough, it is the gateway in the process of insisting on total censorship. Whenever the government has played a role in causing a problem, they will always obfuscate. Unknown or underappreciated by the psychopaths behind scientism is that this is part of a spiritual war, but they have aligned themselves with the losing team. They were willfully ignorant that their eugenicist death cult was doomed before it killed its first victim. This spiritual war is as old and as long as forgotten civilizations on this planet, planet Earth. Now the universe is asking mankind to bring balance to the effluvia of ages that has emerged from the cesspool of misunderstood and unresolved actions that have disrespected life. Why do you think there are so many revelations about some of the very nasty activities that have been going on unseen by the masses? Nothing will be hidden and all will be revealed, but in the right time and sequence, so these activities can be understood and not repeated.